Lansana, co-executive producer of Focus Black Oklahoma, and I'm very privileged and happy to be speaking with my dear friend, Ms. Victoria Tabio, who is a Tulsa native, a Holland Hall graduate, and is a resident of New York City. And you've been in New York City for how long now?
Yeah, so I made the decision to move to New York City September 2019, so not even a year yet. And this is quite a wild way to start my New York City adventures.
Yeah, I'm sure that it is. First of all, let's start with how are you doing? First of all, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's actually wonderful how many people, friends, family have reached out because I'm in, the epicenter, and that is always the first question, right? And I think everybody's always asked that question, and it's on a normal day, it's a pretty average question. And then on a day like this and during times like this, it's actually a very heavy question.
Right.
The answer is that it depends on the day, depends on the weather, depends on, what I have going on. But overall, I'm doing great considering the situation. I feel very fortunate that as of right now, I feel financially stable. I am, unfortunately, a part of the unemployment rate. I have gone into the unemployment zone. And so, that comes along with a lot of stresses, but overall, I have a roof over my head. I've been lucky enough to stay healthy during this time, and my roommate has also been able to stay healthy. I've been hanging out with friends like you and family and everybody. And so overall, it's been great. But you can't help but recognize that everybody it depends on the time of day whenever you ask them, how are you doing?
Wow. So I wanted to get into talking about your job, but and what took you to New York City in the first place, but you just said something that really struck me. So what is the pulse? You're saying that it's day to day. What is the pulse? What is the temperature of the city right now? And let's also talk about where you live in particular as well.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you an average day of what it looks like going through this in New York City, I have 4 roommates who live in this apartment, me included. Within 1 week, 3 out of the 4 lost their jobs. So the economic situation hit fast, and it hit hard here. Then the following week, 2 of those people left. 2 of my roommates were from Australia, and they decided, let me go ahead and get out of this city before I can no longer do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So now we're down to me and my roommate, Brenna, who's from Miami. And what the day looks like is we start every day with a briefing. We sit down, we have our coffee, and we look at what are the numbers. Right now we're at April 21st, and New York City has seen, if I remember correctly this morning, over 250,000 cases.
Right.
And we've hit over 14,000 deaths.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, you have to sit there. You almost have to take a moment to digest what is going on behind these walls, outside of these walls. And so we start with a digestion of the day, and then at noon, we make a joke where it's like, okay, we're done with the news. We've done our digestion. Now we need to go about our days, whether that's reading, whether that's going outside and walking, the little freelance jobs that we are fortunate enough to get, working on those, connecting with loved ones. That's really then what the rest of the day looks like. But even though you might have a consistent schedule here, you can't help but go through the ebbs and flows of being in the epicenter.
Right.
So I've been talking to some of my friends, and again, I think that across the United States, we're feeling a shared experience. It might be more extreme in certain cases in New York City. Mm-hmm. It might be very different. My friends that live in the Bay Area are experiencing that in a very different way as well. But you can't help but have moments of anxiety, moments of hope, and optimism, then moments of mild to severe irritation, right? Frustration, grief. And grief is a really interesting emotion that I have not experienced in this way. And whenever I think of grief and what my friends and I have been talking about around that emotion is grief in the sense of loss of sense of security, loss of jobs, loss of that sense of control, and like we know what the future is going to be like. So you go through these ebbs and flows, both sometimes very positive. There are days where I am just in awe of how grateful I am to have a rooftop that I can sit on and sunbathe, to have fresh bell peppers in my refrigerator and I can make a delicious meal that night, to then total, confusion. What is going on? Why do I feel like I'm not supported by the government? Why do I feel like I don't know what my future looks like anymore? So that's what I mean by that. And I think everybody is experiencing that, whether you're in the epicenter or you're not. You can't help but go through all of those emotions of grief.
Sure, but it's got to be I would imagine, having been a New Yorker, having lived there before, and actually living there and living through the attacks on September 11th, that being in the epicenter in New York City, it has to be a much more intense kind of walking with, navigating that grief.
Yeah. And I think, it's right in front of my face, whether I want it to be or not. I can't escape it. So I go on my walks. I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, to be clear with that. And in Brooklyn, there are two neighborhoods that have been hit really, really significantly by this pandemic. And it's Bushwick and Williamsburg. And I'm very close to both of those areas. Crown Heights is also very high up on the list. It's just not the top two. And so you can't help but go outside and every single person has a mask on.
Right.
You can't help but look around and realize that your favorite restaurant is not closed temporarily. They have gone out of business. And, then you also have some really horrific situations where I was walking around in Bushwick just the other day and you see the refrigerated semis that what they are holding. You can't help but walk past that and feel the impact of what this pandemic has done. And something else that a lot of my friends talk about, and I think it's very stark and something, who you used to live here, it is quiet right now. My window is open. Normally, if I was doing a recording with somebody or if I was on the phone, that window would have to be shut. I'd have to be in a closet or somewhere, to get away from the city sounds. And for the past 5, almost 6 weeks now, all I hear are birds chirping and ambulances.
Which is a whole kind of, that's a different kind of eerie. That's not serene or solace like it might be here in Tulsa. That's another kind of energy.
Absolutely. And what an interesting, it's also very interesting that those are the two sounds that you're hearing in New York City, right? Nature and then the pandemic, the direct results of it. Dead quiet and nature is coming out. You're seeing animals all of a sudden that I hadn't seen before. I never heard a bird chirp. And now all of a sudden I have all these birds around my apartment that I had no idea, right? So you're really getting these two contrasting environments put right in front of you and you can't hide from it. So yeah, in that way, it is in your face whenever you're in the epicenter.
Right. And I know that's intense. Now, I've read off and on that major crime was up in New York City, but regular sort of, I won't say regular, but sort of other crimes, more routine crimes have been down, actually. You brought up security. What is your sense of feeling safe when you go out?
Yeah. This is a common question, especially, with my parents, right?
Of course.
Checking in on me. For the most part, I really do feel safe. But that being said, my roommate and I have started to take certain precautions in order to make sure that we're good. So not only do we always have gloves and a mask on whenever we go shopping, but we only leave the apartment during the day. Once it starts to get dark, we don't go out anymore. And it's really funny. It was almost like an unsaid agreement, right? You just feel it. You're like, you know what? There's nobody on the streets. And that can lend itself to an unsafe situation. There have been robberies in the area. We actually just recently had one of the, a mobile police station, the trailers that can be parked in neighborhoods. One was actually just parked about a block away from my apartment, which throws it in your face that crime has risen around here. So yeah, you can't help but feel that. But I have never felt unsafe necessarily. It's more like I have adjusted my lifestyle in order to make sure that I'm good.
Have you personally, or your roommate, or anyone of your friends in New York experienced the direct impact regarding the number of police and fire department personnel who have actually contracted the virus? I mean, thousands of police have contracted the virus. Some have recovered, some have not. But I know that there was a wave a week or so ago of many city employees, from fire to police to sanitation to train conductors on the on the train, the subway. Has that impacted you directly in any way?
First of all, the subway, what is that?
Right.
I mean, I don't even know where my Metro card is. Like, that's insane to me. I used to take the subway constantly. Now I don't even think about it. It's not even an option anymore. But that's more a part of the conversations that we've been having. Very fortunately, I have not had a friend or a loved one be impacted by this pandemic. As far as I know, nobody has COVID-19. But my roommate has had several family members that live in Queens be impacted by it. And unfortunately, they have had one death in the family, and they have had a couple of other family members become ill from it. And so, of course, there's this heightened tension going on. But as far as like the police departments and the fire and all of the essential workers, I don't know any of them personally in the community, but it is a conversation that we are having right now. What does that look like? And are there going to be enough police officers to keep all the businesses safe, people safe?
Have you felt like you've not felt less safe? I guess sort of asking that question in an indirect sense.
Right.
You don't feel less safe because of the alarming number of folks, city officials who've been infected. You feel you don't go out at night. You've shared that, so there's that degree of security. You no longer ride the subway. You no longer ride the train, which is huge, right? Which is really significant. It's a part of everyday life in New York City, multiple times. Which means you're pretty much staying in the 6-block area surrounding your apartment.
Yes, that is exactly right. That's exactly what this is. I think, I do feel safe. I also recognize that I am a woman that is not going to be as impacted as intensely as other people. What this is really showing us, it's almost like a great reveal that is highlighting the ways in which we have left many people of color, immigrants, and poor people to die. We have failed those communities. And you feel that in a city that is so incredibly diverse.
Right.
So for instance, you know, the bodegas, that's being hit incredibly hard. And bodegas, of course, are mainly, you know, usually ran by people of color or immigrants.
Right.
And they're also a quintessential part of the New York City life. I mean, we're talking about something that is so iconically New York City, and hundreds of them have been shut down. And
Wow.
that is significant. That is significant. What are those communities supposed to do? Especially because a lot of bodegas serve a purpose in neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores.
Right.
That don't have access to the essential goods that we're talking about.
Right.
And so you see these communities being impacted in a massive, massive way. And I am sure that whenever you live in those communities, you don't feel nearly as safe. I recognize that I do have a privilege in that sense, and that my story is not a universal New York City story right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if there was a grocery store where you were in Crown Heights. You know, I haven't lived there in almost, 20 years, but I knew that there were, I used to go to shop at a grocery store in Crown Heights back in the day, which may or may not still be there. But there's one close by to you.
Yes. So we have, you know, and actually there are several grocery stores. A lot of them are smaller, which is great. I like supporting the mom and pop. But, you know, then we have a massive one, Food Town, that's nearby. But a lot of people don't want to go to those massive areas right now. So you're seeing a lot of the mom and pop. I'll go to 2 or 3 different smaller grocery stores to get the goods that I need, rather than going into the place that has a line outside the block just to get in.
Right.
So yeah, luckily enough, we do have grocery stores, and for the most part, the bodegas are staying put around where I'm at. But, you know, something else that is really apparent is whenever people say, and I hear this with my Tulsa friends, and I love that, this sense of community on support your restaurants.
Right.
Support your restaurants. That could have been something about 3 weeks ago. But we can no longer support our restaurants. The restaurants that we were trying to support have shut down here.
Wow.
I mean, it is astonishing. It is heartbreaking, Q, to walk down these streets and it is closed. I mean, everything, and not temporarily, as in we couldn't make it, guys. Right. And so we don't have the ability to support these restaurants anymore. It's too far gone for a lot of them. Right. And especially in an industry that has notoriously small margins. And then you talk about New York City, where rent is looking at 20, 40 grand. Right. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. And so that's really heart-wrenching. And that's a part of the grief. That's a part of that survivor's guilt. You know, I talk to my friends that still have jobs, and they feel guilty that they have a job. They feel guilty that there are people that have lost their businesses because of this. Right. And so I think that's really where you're seeing a massive impact here.
What did you think when Sugar Shack, which is or Shake Shack rather, not Sugar Shack, Shake Shack, which I've been to a few in New York, when they received their PPP money, they sent it back, in part because of, speaking of the restaurants and the restaurant owners that you just referenced there in Brooklyn, who are just shut down, the small businesses that have not received money, or having a difficult time receiving their money, and Shake Shack just sent their 10 million back and said, we're okay. And it's just, I mean, that's a wonderful gift. It's a wonderful gesture that the two gentlemen, the CEO and the owner of Shake Shack made. There was one right across the street from where I worked in the Flatiron District in Manhattan. It's still there in Madison Square Park. And thinking about that kind of I don't know, altruism in the face of this when so many, as you referenced, so many restaurants, so many small businesses are closing their doors and not going to make it. And thinking about, again, to me, New York City, other than my closest friends, is about bodegas all hours of the day and night, and restaurants with food, with cuisine that's very specific to very specific cultures from various cultures that you can't find anywhere else unless you go, to that country.
Yeah.
Which leads me also to something you referenced a moment ago, which is the disproportionate number of COVID-19 infections and deaths that are people of color. It's affecting us so disproportionately as opposed to non-folks of color. So what are you experiencing regarding that dynamic in New York City?
Yeah, I think, you named a couple of things that are really iconic New York, right? You move to New York City, or you visit New York City, and you feel the energy, right? You go into a subway and you are all of a sudden realizing that nobody looks like you. Not a single person looks the same here. How beautiful. How absolutely beautiful. And that's really unique about New York City, is how incredibly diverse it is. And I think, this sense of community comes from that. Mm-hmm. You hear it all the time when Andrew Cuomo is saying New York City tough. I mean, he has become, pretty iconic right now. Everybody is coming together as a community. And I think that there's a part of that, a part of the ebbs and flows is this sense of hope, right? Like, normally in times of struggle or chaos or grief, we actually physically come together, right? I would go over to your house. I would bring my people in, and we would hug and we would touch and we would say, everything's going to be okay. This is a challenge for us because we're going to have to show up as a community in another way. We're going to have to break down that digital hashtag community and actually show up for each other in a way that we're not familiar with it. It's not innate to us. And so I love seeing businesses that have the means to say, hold on, we don't need this. Somebody else in the community needs this. And especially in a city like this with almost 9 million people, you see that everywhere. You see, all of a sudden I'm receiving handwritten notes. All of a sudden I'm talking to friends that I haven't talked to in years. You're seeing people give back and volunteer however they possibly can, knowing that this is impacting a large portion of the community here in just an astronomical way.
Right.
And so I do think that without sounding like toxic optimism in my mind is like, this is meant for a reason, right? Like,
right.
Everything's going to be okay. It's like, okay, all right. Yes, we're going to be okay, but let's actually look at the situation. How can we help each other through this?
Right.
How can we help each other through this? And so that's been wonderful to see, like you're talking about with Shake Shack. But then, of course, you have other giant companies here who are not doing that at all, man.
Right.
I mean, not at all. And I think that exposes a lot. Again, this is the great reveal. It's not like people of color and immigrants and the poor are all of a sudden struggling for the first time. This is not new. This is not new. This is a foundation that is now really moaning and sighing and going, guys, help us out. Look at what is happening.
Right.
So there's a lot of different fibers that go into this rat's nest.
Well said. And you brought up, again, one of the things that I loved about and continue to love about New York is that diversity. And just yesterday, Mr. Trump has decided to shut down all immigration. Which, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? What's your take on that?
I think that this is a perfect opportunity for somebody who is wanted to do that for so long, to go ahead and do it and use it as an excuse. I get it. Honestly, we shouldn't be flying around. In my mind, it's like, guys, can everybody please just sit down on the couch? And like, I know you want to go to Arkansas. I know you want to go to Colorado, but like, come on, let's ground the planes. Let's chill. Let's get this under control. So I do agree with the sentiment, but I know exactly what that is actually. He's not doing it for that reason. And we all know that. And I think it's important for us to also keep in mind and pay attention to the news that is flying under the radar right now. You know, what else is our government and this administration doing by capitalizing on this pandemic? You know, it's a very simple political game. Look over here, look over here. This is total chaos. And we're going to go and start sliding some things under that we just haven't had the opportunity to. So that's my stance on it. I think some people can say, well, yeah, that makes sense. Nobody should be flying right now at all. Nobody should be moving right now. Everybody needs to stay still for a second. Agreed. But you know that's not really why he did that.
You know, I'm sure you're aware that there have been protests to reopen the country in various cities and states. I don't believe that I've read about any happening in New York City.
No, man. No.
Go ahead.
I mean, you're talking about 250,000 people, and those are the people that have been recorded. You know, that's not all the cases. That's not all the cases. Those are the people that are so sick that they needed a test. So this place is going, we need to chill. We have to chill. It is quiet outside for a reason. Everybody is recognizing this. You have to stay inside, not for yourself, for everybody. And it's going to suck. You're going to go through a lot of emotional ups and downs, but it's what we have to do. And then, you know, I read a news article yesterday about Denver, that there were protests and the healthcare workers were standing in the streets, blocking them from protesting. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think it lends itself to a lot of different themes, a lot of different issues that this nation has with conspiracy theories. You know, you're hearing a ton of conspiracy theories right now going around, and those can cause a lot of harm. Those can cause a lot of harm. And I think people just aren't, you know, I get it. I'm frustrated. I don't have a job. I want the economy to be open. But we can't get this economy open until we get this thing under control. So it really has been astonishing to see so many other places that haven't been impacted like this to say it's time to open the doors again. It's just like, yeah, no, not yet. I get it. Of course, I want a job. I want our economy to be up. I want to feel safe again. I want to go back to quote unquote normal, but we have to respect the situation. We have to save everybody. We have to think not for ourselves, but for everybody else.
What other things have you witnessed during your time out or out of the apartment? What other things have you witnessed? You've referenced both some of the scary elements, but also some of the beautiful aspects of this as well. Can you share more about maybe some of the more positive things you've seen that you've witnessed?
Yeah. You know, roof culture. Roof culture is exploding here right now. I am a big part of it. And it's very funny. There's actually a lot of footage online. I recommend everybody, you know, go out and look at it because it's really uplifting and wonderful, where it's almost like the buildings are spilling out, like life will continue to spill out. We can't go onto the streets, but all of a sudden, every single fire escape has people laying out, reading books, listening to music. You go up on the roof. I go up on the roof every single day to dance, to sunbathe, to talk to friends, to wave at neighbors. you feel the sun, you feel the air, and it feels good. And that's become a massive part of New York City, is all of these fire escapes and all of these roofs. Same with stoop life. I love the stoops in Brooklyn. I love the brownstone stoops. And you walk down the street, everybody is on their stoops, drinking their drinks, enjoying talking to their neighbors from a distance. And so it's funny, you see the buildings continue to have life in them, even though we can't necessarily go out into the streets just yet.
You think maybe even more so than before the pandemic? Oh,
absolutely. So a part of the joke, and something that is unfortunate for a lot of people here, a part of the joke is whenever you move here, the landlord says, don't worry about the tiny room. You're never going to be here. Right? Which is true until about 6 weeks ago. And so all of a sudden people who I've read articles, one in the New York Times talking about somebody who has no windows in their room. No windows. So what do? You have to go to the roof. You have to sit on the steps. You have to get out. And so that's been a big part of it. And I think it's just wonderful to see that. I think it's wonderful to see that.
What do you want to share with your native and fellow Tulsans about your journey, and about this experience that you feel like folks here would need to know?
Yeah. I am going to compliment the Tulsa community for a second here, because it's actually been a source of positivity for me. I have a lot of friends that are in the bartending, the service, the music scene, that have really been put in an incredibly bad spot. And the one really wonderful benefit to Tulsa being so close knit is that everybody has been pitching and helping out however they can. All of a sudden, I'm able to listen to friends that I haven't heard play music in almost a year. I get to put them on, I get to go on Facebook. I get to clean my apartment while I listen to them play music. I can give them virtual tips. I'm having friends that are bartenders. They're teaching bartending classes virtually. I have friends that are dance instructors that are teaching dance, virtually. All of this, there's a lot of opportunity here for us to continue to connect, even though we can't do it how we normally want to. I can't hug you, but I can listen to you play some music. I can give you a couple of dollars. I can learn how to make a whiskey sour. And that's really been incredible. And I've seen that more so in Tulsa than here.
Really?
Yes. And I think it's because it's so close knit. Everybody knows the core people of downtown, of the music scene. And so they really have banded together. New York City is so massive that I'm sure there are small communities that are helping out, but on a larger scale, like what I'm seeing Tulsa do, it's not the same. And so I've been really, really proud of the city in that way. And I think it's wonderful to see people being so optimistic. I did have to have a soapbox moment with my parents last night where I had to tell them to wear a mask. I think that's also something else that here it's like I am mandated to wear a mask.
Right.
There is no option. And the numbers, people need to remember that the numbers are only the people that have been tested. They're significantly more. Did you hear that? That is thunder.
Wow, I did hear that.
There's never thunder in New York.
You're right.
This is incredible. No, but I had to talk to my parents and say, guys, I hate to tell you this, but you're older. And I really would feel better if you start taking this seriously. A lot of my friends in other cities that aren't as impacted are not taking this seriously. And it makes me very worried because that's what happens. That's what happened here. It wasn't taken seriously. And whenever we started to react, it was too late. It was really climbing up. So that is just something else I would say. Don't be scared. It's not like you need to get into the mania of it, but just be aware that this really is something, even though it's not tangible, which is also a part of that confusion that we get and that lack of sense of security is you can't see the enemy. But make sure that you're aware of it. Continue to stay informed with what your local government is doing. And keep everybody safe. This is the time to be selfless. So that's it. Other than that, everybody in New York, I mean, of course, most people in New York are not from New York. And all of the friends that I've talked to have said that the outpour of love for us, the amount of people that call me on a regular basis to tell me they love me and that they hope I'm doing okay has been incredible. So just know that we're here with you guys as well. We're going to stay safe. We're going through the same frustrations. We're going through the same emotional up and downs, but we're going to get through this.
Well, we miss you here in Tulsa, and thank you for taking the time. This interview will be posted for all of the world to see in a couple of days, Thursday.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, friend. Be safe.
Yeah.
We love you. I love you.
Love you guys too.
Stay smart, okay?
All right. Love you guys.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.